Okay, in this video, I'm going to go through the test review for 6.3. So here's your first equation. So I'm going to keep a little list of what the changes are. I'm going to put it to the right of the problem. So our first problem is y equals negative cosine t plus 4. So I have two changes. One is a flip, and that's a flip over the x-axis. And the other is that the midline, or the D, equals 4. Okay, so I have no angle changes, no amplitude changes. So bear that in mind. So you're going to get your graph, and I'm going to write down my quadrantal angles. So the first one is 0, then I have pi over 2, I have pi, I have 3 pi over 2, and I have 2 pi. Okay, on my y-axis, I have 4, which is my new midline, and then I'm going to have my amplitude go up 1 and down 1. I'm going to dash my midline, and I'm going to look. I want cosine, but I want cosine flipped. So cosine is the cup. The cup is flipped, so the cup is not holding water. So I start at my first angle, which is 0 radians. I go up to pi over 2 radians with a y value of 4, and then go to 5, then back down to 4, and then all the way back down, and I connect those dots. So remember, we're connecting the dots. We're not doing just a freehand sketch, and we're looking for your y-axis, which is right here, to have these values, and your t-axis, also known as your x-axis, to have these angles. Okay, so you have to have that, and you have to have the right shape. So let's go on to the next problem. This one is y equals 6.5 sine of t. So all that's changing here is that my amplitude is now 6.5. My d is not changed from 0, and my angles are not changed as well, and I'm also not flipping it. Okay, so let's start our sketch. So our central line is still at 0. So here's the amp of a high of 6.5, and then a low of negative 6.5. Get your angles. Your first one is 0 radians, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. It's sine. Sine is the snake. The snake starts at the origin, or at the midline, I should say. Starts here. It arches its back up, comes back down to the midline, back to the minimum, and then back up to the midline. Connect those points. There you have it. Okay, again, don't do a freehand sketch, but instead connect the dots. There's more changes coming in the next problem. So here I see that I have a flip. I have an amp equal to 17, and I have a D, or the midline, equaled to negative 20. Okay, so I tell my class to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plan ahead and realize that most of it is down below the t-axis. My angles have not changed, so I'm going to indicate the 0, the pi over 2, the pi, the 3 pi over 2, and the 2 pi. Remember, these are the quadrantal angles on a unit circle. Okay, my new central line is at negative 20. Okay, so what I say is that the last shall be first. On the y-axis, consider this last, but handle it first. So I have a negative 20 as a new midline. Then if I add 17 to it, I get a negative 3, which is my max. If I add another negative 17 to it, I get a low or minimum value of negative 37. Okay, so now look at the function. It is a sine, but it is flipped. Sine always starts from the midline. So here's my degree, here's my midline. Then instead of arching its back up, it's going to go down, back up to the midline, all the way up to the max, and then back down to the midline. And there you have it. Okay, again, not a freehand sketch, but a connect the dots. Okay, now we're going to work into the day 2 material, where I have a change right in here that deals with my angles. So my angles are no longer the quadrantal angles. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is list my changes. So I see that my amp, let me just get another color. Okay, my amp is going to be 4. Okay, this says t minus 5 pi over 2. That means that you're going to add 5 pi over 2 to your original starting angle of 0 radians. When you add 5 pi over 2, you get 5 pi over 2. So I'm going to list out the angles. You are always going to be doing this. This is the best thing to do before you try to sketch. My first angle is the 5.2. Every single angle will have a difference of pi over 2 between them. You need to find 5 of them. So add a 5 pi over 2 each time. If I add 1 pi over 2 to 5 pi over 2, I get 6 pi over 2, 7 pi over 2, that's 1, 2, 3 angles, 8 pi over 2, and 9 pi over 2. Now, before I put these on my t-axis, I'm going to reduce them. So 5 pi over 2 can't change. 6 pi over 2 is really 3 pi. 7 pi over 2 is fine. 8 pi over 2 is really 4 pi. And 9 pi over 2 is fine. So what I do to make sure that I don't mess up is I highlight the angles I'm going to use. And yes, you need to reduce your angles. And yes, I'm going to take off if you don't. Okay, now let's draw our shape. So it's a cosine. It only has an amp change. So on that y-axis, I still have my central line. That's still at 0. And my amp is, my y values are positive 4 and negative 4. Now do my angles. I'm going to start here, 5 pi over 2, 3 pi, 7 pi over 2, 4 pi, and the last one will be 9 pi over 2. Okay, the shape is a cosine. I start high. Remember, you're going to start at the first angle. It is no longer at 0. So your first angle is 5 pi over 2, so you best start right there. Okay, you're going to go to 0 because that's your midline still, and then down to negative 4, up to 0, and all the way up to 4. The biggest mistake I see is not starting here. So be careful, make sure you start right there where that angle is, because that is your first angle. And why is that? Because of this. Okay, so we've gotten through half the problems. Let's keep going. Okay, for problem number 5, what I see is I have lots of changes. So I'm going to make sure that I list them. So the first thing I see is I have a flip. Then my amp is 3. My starting angle, because it says plus, I'm going to go minus to the left, 4 pi over 3. And my midline equals a negative 2. Okay, let's get our angles. If we're going to the left, 4 pi over 3 from 0, that means my first angle is going to be negative 4 pi over 3. Okay, so we have some issues here. I have to add pi over 2 each time. It's hard to add a pi over 2 to 4 pi over 3. So I'm going to make my starting angle for right now, as I'm calculating things, negative 8 pi over 6. I just multiplied by 2 over 2, and I'm going to add, let's say I'm going to multiply by 3 over 3, so I'm going to add 3 pi over 6 each time to get my angles. So I have a negative pi over 6 plus a 3 pi over 6 gives me a negative 5 pi over 6 plus a 3 pi over 6 gives me a negative 2 pi over 6 plus a 3 pi over 6 gives me a positive pi over 6 plus a 3 pi over 6 gives me a positive 4 pi over 6. Okay, now go ahead and reduce those angles as possible. The first angle is a negative 4 pi over 3. The next one is fine. The third angle is a negative pi over 3. Oops, pi over 3, sorry. The fourth one's fine, and the fifth one is a 2 pi over 3. Highlight the angles I'm going to use. I'm going to use negative 4 pi over 3, negative 5 pi over 6, negative pi over 3, pi over 6, and 2 pi over 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 angles. That's what I need. Okay, so let's go ahead and start graphing. Things that I'm noticing, it is a cosine. I have a new central line, and my angles, 3 of them will be negative. Okay, so given that, and my central line is going to be below. So I'm going to do a line here, and then I'm going to put my vertical axis about here. Okay, let's go ahead and get our new central line. So that's going to be down here at negative 2. Okay, so let's say this is negative 2. If I go up by 3, and notice I said 3 and not negative 3, your amp is 3. The negative just tells you you have a flip. This is going to be 1, and this bottom number is going to be negative 5. Don't put anything else on your y-axis. Just put what you need and nothing else. Okay, let's do our angles. This one's going to be negative 4 pi over 3, and then I have negative 5 pi over 6, and I have negative pi over 3. This is a negative. And then over here, I have pi over 6 and 2 pi over 3. Noticing that the highlights help me pick the correct angles. Okay, so I may just lower this down just a little tad bit. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now let's go ahead and draw our shape. It's a cosine, but it's negative. That means it's a cup that is falling down. And so that means I'm not going to start at my highest. Instead, I'm going to start at my lowest. So my lowest is at negative 5 on the y-axis, and on the x-axis, it's the first angle. So that's why my dot's there. Second angle comes up to the midline. Third angle comes up to the 1. Fourth angle comes down to the midline. Fifth, back down to the bottom. Here's my shape. Okay, so things that I see that are problematic sometimes, you are not going to have a dot on your y-axis because 0 radians is not one of your degrees. Okay, so you should have a dot lining up with your angles and no place else. Okay, next thing, let's go on to number 6. We've got 3 more problems to do. So looking at number 6, I see that I have several changes. Let's list them. My amp is 13. My midline is 10. And I'm going to start my shape over 4 pi over 11 from 0. That means that my first angle will be positive 4 pi over 11. Okay, so that's my first angle. But it's going to be hard to deal with that, so I'm going to make it 8 pi over 22. Why did I do that? Because I need an even number on the bottom. So I want to add pi over 2 each time. I'm going to multiply this by 11 over 11, and I'm going to add 11 pi over 2 each time. Okay, so my first angle, I'm going to write down initially as 8 pi over 22 is positive. Add 11 to that, you get 19 pi over 22. Add 11 to that, you get 30 pi over 22. Add another 11 to that, 41 pi over 22. Add 11 to that, 52 pi over 22. Okay, now I'm going to reduce where needed. So the 8 pi over 22 becomes 4 pi over 11. 19 pi over 22 is good. This one becomes 15 pi over 11. 41 is good. 52 becomes 26 pi over 11. And my procedure is that I highlight the angles I'm going to use. I need 5 of them. I have 5 highlighted circles. Okay, for this one, what I'm going to do is look at it and say, all right, I have a new center line at 10. All my angles are positive. Therefore, when I do my little grid, it's going to look like kind of like this. Trying to plan ahead a little bit. Okay, first should be last, or the last should be first rather. So this is 10, add 13 to 10, you get 23. Subtract 13 from 10, and you get negative 3. That's the only values you want to have on your y-axis. Now come the angles. 4 pi over 11, 19 pi over 22, 15 pi over 11, 41 pi over 22, and 26 pi over 11. Okay, the shape is a sine. I'm going to dot my center line. Sine always starts at the center line with the first angle. Be careful. Make sure you put this angle where you want it. Don't put it on the y-axis. 0 is not an angle. Sine arches its back up and then back to the midline, down to the lowest, which is not on 0, but it's on negative 3, and then back up to the midline. Okay, so we start out like this and finish like that. Very good. Okay, moving on to question 7. Looking at that, I want to first list my changes. So what I'm seeing is that I have lots of things going on. I have a flip. I have an amp equal to 8. I have a midline equal to 12. Okay, so then my angle is going to be to the right by 6 pi over 7. Again, the 7 being the denominator is a problem. So I'm going to make that first angle 12 pi over 14 just for right now, so that when I add pi over 2, I can do it as 7 pi over 14. So add 7 pi over 14 to each of these. That becomes 19 pi over 14. Another 7 becomes what? 26 pi over 14. Another 7 is 33 pi over 14. And another 7 is 40 pi over 14. Okay, don't leave it like that. Reduce your angles as appropriate. This first one becomes 6 pi over 7. You're basically reducing every other angle. This third one becomes 13 pi over 7, and the fourth one becomes 20 pi over 7. Highlight your angles so that you're not confused as to which ones you are selecting. There are 5, and I need 5. Okay, so now we're going to think about, plan ahead here. I see that I have 12 as the center. Everything's going to be above and in the positive quadrant. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to put this over here. In terms of my y, the last shall be first. 12, add 8, because remember the amp is 8. The negative just tells you to flip. It doesn't have anything to do with the amp. This is 20, subtract 8, that is 4. Identify your midline by a dashed line. Then list your angles. 6 pi over 7, 19 pi over 14, 13 pi over 7, 33 pi over 14, and 20 pi over 7. Okay, so that all looks good to me. Okay, its sine, which is the snake, it's going to go down. Go to your first angle, which is 6 pi over 7, and sine always starts at the center line. Because it's negative, I'm arching my back down, coming up, coming all the way back. There's my curve, and we are on to the last one. So remember, you can stop the video and kind of go over this. I'm talking pretty quickly, but you have the stop button at your disposal. Feel free to use it. I will not be insulted. Okay, next one. Let's come down here. We'll finish in red. List my changes. I have a flip. I have an amp equal to 6.5. I have a midline, or D, of 9.5. And I'm shifting, it looks like to the right, but it's really going left, by 13 pi over 9. Therefore, my first angle would be negative 13 pi over 9, but the odd number in the denominator is problematic, so make that negative 26 pi over 18. Okay, I want to add pi over 2 each time, but I'm going to add it as 9 pi over 18. Sorry about that. Okay, so here my first angle right now is going to be negative 26 pi. My next one, if I add 9 to it, is negative 17 pi over 18. Then I have a negative 8 pi over 18. Then I have a 1 pi over 18, and add another 9 to it, a 10 pi over 18. Okay, I'm going to reduce every other angle. So this is negative 13 pi over 9. This one's okay. This is negative 4 pi over 9. And the last one is 5 pi over 9. Highlight the angles that you're going to use. You need 5 of them. And then start thinking about your graph. So it looks like I have 3 negative angles, and all the other y action is in the first and second quadrants. So I'm going to put my center line, or my axis about here. Okay, and then I'm going to put this axis down here. Okay, that's my T. On my y-axis, what I have is a center line. Remember, last will be first. Do that one first. Add 6.5 to it, I get 16. Subtract 6.5, I get 3. Okay, so I have that. I'm going to dot in my center line. And next, what I'm going to do is write in my angles. So grab the ones that are highlighted. I have 3 that are negative and 2 that are positive. So I'm going to go ahead and space them out. Okay, this is negative 13 pi over 9, negative 17 pi over 18, negative 4 pi over 9, pi over 18, and 5 pi over 9. Okay, So what I want to do now is look at the function. It's a cosine. I remember cosine's a cup, but negative cosine is a cup that spills. Start with your first angle and your lowest y value. Go up to the midline with your second angle. Go all the way to the top with your third angle. Then come back to the midline with your fourth angle, and then the fifth angle is going to be back to the minimum. Give yourself a smooth curve connecting those dots, and you are done. Okay, so those are all 8 problems. If you can do this kind of work, then you will be set for the quiz. Thank you very much.